Hello, I'm Christopher Kenworthy and welcome to Advanced Handheld Camera Work. In the first lesson we looked at how handheld camera work can give a little more energy to a shot, or how you can stage scenes with the actors in various positions and use a handheld camera to move between those positions. But you can also use handheld to replicate the standard movements that you find with mechanical camera work. For example, you can use handheld in place of a tripod pan, or a tilt up or down, and doing so can give you a little more freedom than when you're actually attached to a tripod. Another common camera move is to have the camera on a crane and move it vertically up or down to create shots like this. And these are very impressive shots, but they can be replicated with a handheld camera. And one of the most common shots is the dolly shot or push in, where the camera moves in towards the subject or pulls away from the scene. Although quite tricky to do handheld, it is possible. One of the first things to get right is the grip. Whatever sort of camera you're using, don't just hold it at the sides, but make sure you get one hand under the lens. That will help you to balance everything and should also help you to focus. If you're using a much bigger rig, it'll probably be shoulder mounted and this doesn't quite apply. But if you're doing true handheld work, get your hand under the lens and keep your fingers on the focus ring. To simulate a dolly move, you don't even have to move forwards, you can just move the camera away from your body. So here I'm looking down at the viewfinder and I just let the camera move forward as steadily as possible. And remember, with handheld work you're not trying to add a handheld look, you're just using handheld to achieve an effect quickly without having to set up a dolly and track and all the other paraphernalia that would be required. For a longer handheld move, you will have to take some steps forward, but the secret to getting this right is to move the camera away from your body first and then begin walking. By combining these two motions, the push forward and then the first steps, you make the move very, very smooth. You can see in a shot like this, I push the camera away from my body and then begin walking towards the subject. It's still obviously a handheld move, and getting it very smooth takes a lot of practice, but it can be done. With a traditional dolly, it's very difficult to push in from unusual angles, but using handheld, you can start up high like this, and then just push in straight towards the actor. Tilting the camera is as simple as tilting it as though it were on a tripod. But you can also be a little more inventive and your tilts can sort of swoop down and up. It's as though the camera's sliding forwards and backwards as it tilts. And this can just make the move feel a little more dynamic and interesting. With any tilt, it works best if you're following a subject through the scene. So here, we start the shot on the book, and as she raises the book up, we tilt the camera to follow it, and then she comes into view. And being handheld, that was very quick and easy to set up, but it looks just as good as a tripod shot. When tilting down, again we follow the book as it goes down, and I'm letting the camera sort of swoop backwards a little there. It just makes the move a little more interesting. Panning is as simple as pretending that you're panning with a tripod. You can just move it left to right like that. But you can also hold the camera still and arc your body around. This gives a slightly wider pan. It doesn't feel quite as mechanical as a standard tripod pan. And you can even go to an extreme by pushing the camera much further out from your body and arcing even more. It almost becomes like a crane shot rather than a pan. So here we start with an empty frame, and as the actor moves in, we just pan across with her and then let her move towards the center of the frame, and the camera actually just moves down a little as well there, so we're combining moves. In the second version, I let the actor move much further across the frame so I don't pan quite as hard, and that means towards the end of the shot she's in a better position, framed over on the left of the screen. For changes of height, you don't have to move your legs at all. If you're starting low, you can simply raise the camera up in your hands and you can cover quite a good distance that way. If you do want to go higher, then again the trick is to move with your hands first and then move your legs. So you begin by raising with your hands, and then when you're about a foot up you start to stand up, and that lets you cover quite a good distance without there being any obvious change in the motion as you go up. So here we start on the book, and as the book rises up I just lift the camera in my hands to begin with and then smoothly stand so that I'm at the same height as the actor's head. And by combining those motions the move is almost invisible. And when you're working with traditional equipment, it's very difficult to combine all these moves. But when you're doing handheld, you can combine everything. So here we start with an empty frame, and I pan to follow the actor into the scene. I'm sidestepping as I do, pushing her to the left of the frame, and then I push in and down at the same time. I even go below her and tilt up. It would take some practice to get that exactly right, but you can see the massive potential for creating really complex scenes just by combining a few handheld techniques. The camera only needs to pan like this, point down, push in, then go lower and tilt up, and you're creating a very strong scene like this. Here's a different version where we move across a little more, and now we push in as she sees what's in the book, and then as the camera settles here, I allow it to come down a little and tilt up towards her face. And then at this point, as she looks off, we actually move the camera around her to the side. And you can improvise these moves if you like. It's better to plan them, but sometimes you'll see something in a scene and you just move the camera instinctively, and that's something you could never do with traditional equipment. So handheld camera work gives you the potential to combine mechanical moves to create really complex and interesting sequences.